Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Eagles-Steelers this weekend, 1 o'clock. Don't forget the Birds are back, 6-0, baby. Get your game on at the Gallery, bar, book, and games at Ocean Casino Resort. All football season long. Cheers your favorite drinks while cheering on your favorite team. We'll be there Monday at the Gallery in Ocean Casino Resort. Go for the win. For more info, visit theoceanac.com. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Mike and Ryan with you. Andrew DiCecco's here. Football at 4. We got a lot to break down, the matchups to watch in this one, but I guess we got to start, Andrew DiCecco, with Robert Quinn, that trade and how he fits into the defense. I mean, 18.5 sacks last year, only 1 this year. So give us kind of a breakdown in your mind at what kind of fit Robert Quinn will be in this John Gannon defense.
Well, first of all, Mike, I think it's a fantastic addition by the Eagles at a position of need. Remember, when Derek Barnett went down, they were relying on Teron Jackson and the Patrick Johnsons of the world to really take on that workload and share some of those snaps. But you never really saw those snaps really being taken advantage of, right? I mean, you didn't really see Teron Jackson take that leap forward. Obviously, he was since released as the aftermath of that trade. And I still think that he has some potential, Mike. But they brought Robert Quinn in to shoulder those snaps that were supposed to be allocated to Derek Barnett. That was when Barnett was signed. I remember being on your show and mentioning how critical of a signing that was, given the role, right? He was the third defensive end. And it was going to be able to, having him here was going to be able to afford Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat less snaps and keep everybody fresher. Now, Robert Quinn is probably going to have a more of an impact than Derek Barnett would have had and have a more sizable role than Derek Barnett would have had. And I think that his 1 sack, 8 tackles, I think that's a little bit overblown. He's among the league leaders in commanding double teams, and I think it was sort of a byproduct of the lackluster Bears team overall. Let's not forget, he's 32 years old, and he played 304 snaps, I believe, which is 37 more than the Eagles' leading snap leader, which is Hassan Reddick, who has 267. Played about 68% of the snaps there in Chicago. Won't play anywhere close to that here in all likelihood in Philadelphia. But, I mean, I think you're going to see a much fresher edge rusher, and I think it's really going to – his skill set is really going to add a complementary effect to what they already have. So I think it's a really good signing. And when you look at – if you're the Eagles and you're pushing all your chips in the middle of the table, you have to say to yourself, if we have Super Bowl aspirations, right? What do we have to do to put us in the conversation to be able to go toe-to-toe with a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen? How do we stop those guys? Well, the best way to stop those guys is by bearing down and providing pressure. And I think that they were a piece away from being able to do that. And now that I think that it puts them in the conversation to be able to be right on the same platform with those teams.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Barnett and him kind of filling that stuff. We talked about this earlier. I want to get your opinion on this, Andrew. I mean, you can make a case, a strong case, I guess, see where you see on this. I mean, Robert Quinn, in all actuality, I mean, he's now the best defensive end on this team, right? I mean, he's better than Brandon Graham. He's better than Josh Sweat. Am I wrong about that, or do you agree?
Well, from a pure pass rushing standpoint, yes. But I mean, let's not discount the overall the run defense aspect. That's not his forte at all. He's about 245, really susceptible to run plays going his side. But I think overall, Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat are your best pass rushers at this point in his career. Now, I think Robert Quinn's actually the 5th or 6th active leader in sacks right now. So let's not just discount that. But I think overall, your best defensive end is probably Josh Sweat.
And I say that not disrespecting those guys. Graham's been great, but you're right, as a pass rusher, maybe not as a run stopper, every down guy. Because I say that Brandon Graham's been a great player, 62 career sacks. Josh Sweat has really, been a find in like the 4th round. This guy's got 102 sacks. I mean, he had 18.5 sacks last year, and it's like, does he cut into somebody's snaps? Do you think that the Eagles will be forced to have to play him more? You pair him up with Hassan Reddick, and you have those two guys overhanging on the outside. I mean, there's so many interesting things that could come from his skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think ideally the Eagles would like Brandon Graham to play less snaps to keep him fresher for the stretch run, keep him healthy. He's a little bit older, and you want to ensure that he has that burst later in the season. So I do think that you're going to see Robert Quinn play more snaps than even Derek Barnett would have had he been healthy. And that's a good problem to have. They have quite a gamut of pass rushers that you can count on game day, and they all present different matchups against offensive tackles that teams are going to have to account for. And I think if you're a team like the Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs, not to look too far ahead, you have to be a little bit concerned knowing that the Eagles are stocking themselves up for a deep postseason run, and they might have to they might end up meeting when it's all said and done. And how do you contend with that pass rush?
Yeah, that's definite. Now, I don't know, Vic Fangio was not in Chicago, right, when Quinn was there, but they kind of used his defense the following year. This defense, from my understanding, is completely different from the Fangio defense that he ran in Chicago when Quinn got there, before and had his big year. Now he comes into a defense that is much closer or similar or almost the same, right, as he played in Chicago. So would you say he wasn't a great fit in this particular defense, or is this a guy who has had a massive skill drop-off? Why the one sack?
No, that's a great question, Mike. And I don't think that it's a drop-off in talent. I think some of it is sometimes when you're a veteran and you look at the snaps that he's taken, 304 snaps. That's an awful lot for a player who's commanding a top five rate as far as double teams go. I mean, that's a big ask, and you never want to just use that as an excuse to say why someone only got one sack. But this is a veteran player playing on a team that wasn't very good. I'm not saying this to ever say it's an effort thing or something like that, but it's just sometimes it's the environment and the circumstances and the situation that you're in that really dictate your performance. And I think coming here will be a breath of fresh air for Robert. And I think Chicago will benefit from it as well, being able to play some younger guys. And I think here he knows his role. He's a good locker room guy by all accounts. And I think that he's going to be fresher and know that he has a chance to come here and win a championship. So I think it's just a great fit for all parties involved.
Yeah, the question of, hey, does this signify they're going for it? That doesn't even need to be asked. I mean, they're 6-0. They go out and trade for Robert Quinn. You're going for it. Anything else that you look over? First off, let's go back a second. How surprised were you that they went for it at that level, with that position and that level of player?
Well, not totally. I mean, I think I mentioned Robert Quinn on your show last week, and I said, perhaps even Brian Burns, knowing that was not really a possibility. The Eagles are not going to give 2 first-round picks for a pass rusher and Brian Burns, knowing what they already have. That's a steep investment. I mentioned Robert Quinn as being a potential target, knowing that it's sort of along the same lines as the Chris Long, that veteran player that can reliably give you some snaps, be a good locker room guy, and kind of know his role and just really fit in with the culture here in Philadelphia. And I knew that it had to be someone that really was going to buy into what Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts and all those veterans in Philadelphia are building there. And that's why I say it's such a delicate balance when you get a trade executed when the team is 6-0 and everything's going so well. We mentioned a player like Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is very well liked in that locker room. So adding a guy like whatever running back you want to name to go there, they have to be really careful without upsetting the apple cart there, because the Eagles have a really good thing going, and I think Robert Quinn really fits what they're trying to do moving forward.
Andrew, it's Ryan. When we look at this Robert Quinn acquisition, and Gil brings up Eagles going for it, we can all agree they're going for it. But Howie doesn't do that at a certain cost, right? Like this, there's value here bringing in Robert Quinn and what Howie Roseman and the Eagles were required to give up. Now, still some days before the trade deadline officially arrives. What do you think is the most that Howie Roseman would be willing to give up? Like there's, rumors and debates out there. Well, should the Eagles give up a future first for a guy like Alvin Kamara, right? Like, is that even on the table, or is that something that Howie Roseman looks at and says, nah, I'm good?
Well, that's a really interesting question, Ryan. And the reason being is that the Eagles, when you look at their roster right now and what their needs are, to me, right at the top of the list is number 3 safety and backup running back. So to get a player like Alvin Kamara, is he among the league's best? Undeniably, right? But he's 27 years old. He is more of a finesse player, which is not what the Eagles need. And he does have some upcoming legal challenges that he has to get sorted out as well. So that's something that also clouds the picture, right? So I think that when you look at what they need, they should be able to find value in a backup running back that specializes in pass protection. And a number 3 safety. I mean, maybe they want to call the Colts and see what Rodney McLeod's going rate is right now. Just to get a third safety that could step in, play special teams, kind of just blend in with what they're doing, knowing full well, Ryan, that hey, you're not going to be starting, but you got a chance to win a ring. I think that those are the 2 most pressing needs right now. So you should be able to, in theory, get them at a very reasonable rate given their positions.
Andrew, what's a position on either side of the ball that we may look at right now and say, nah, we're good. Eagles are good. But depth-wise, Andrew, what's a position that you're looking at saying, not trying to be glass half empty, Mr. Negative here, but it's football. Injuries happen. What's a position that you look at and say, man, you know what? If one of these 2 guys or if someone went down here right now, the Eagles would be in trouble really quick.
There's only one answer to this question, though, right, Andrew?
Secondary to me. I mean, that's.
Right, if they lost someone at corner, who plays corner? If they lost Slayer Bradbury, right?
That's what I was going to say. From a broader perspective, not only safety, who I mentioned, but outside corner is sort of a dark horse position, guys, that I could see them maybe going with a veteran because. What happens if Bradbury misses some plays or Slay misses some? I mean, you're going to have Zach McPherson out there for an extended period of time. He would be the next up. And I don't know that he's ready, but I also don't think that he's really the type of player that's going to thrive in that role, right? I think he's more of an inside player, spot guy, in sub packages. I don't know that he's the guy you want out there for the lion's share of the snaps. So I think that a third safety and also maybe a veteran perimeter corner might be a position that they would look at. I think they're all right at linebacker. I think they like the pairing that they have, and they also have Nakobe Dean waiting in the wings. I think they really like what they have in T.J. Edwards and Kaiser White, and they're playing at a fine level. And they've already added to the pass rushing group there. And then I think defensive tackle is arguably one of the strongest positions on the team outside of offensive line. So I think that when you really look at it and take a step back, there's only a couple positions there that really need some that really could stand to be bolstered, and those are the ones that I've outlined.
Yeah, I know that we strive to find the perfect team. You're not quite ever going to be the perfect team. This team has some special teams issues. Punt returner, special teams coverage stuff, that kind of stuff. And Andrew, I know that sounds trivial sometimes to the fans, but I go back to last year's NFC Championship game, look no further than Green Bay special teams were a disaster. So would that be an area, too, that Howie needs to at least think about in trying to find those Brian Brayman's? I know Camus Grugier-Hill just got released, like trying to find those kind of players at this time of the year.
Yes. And, big picture, those guys are often overlooked, but that third phase is so important, and that can cost you a game. And I mentioned if they don't fortify that area, guys, that ultimately will eventually cost them a game at some point. I mean, the muff kicks, the muff punts, with Britton Covey, I think he's had 3 already.
Is that why Greg Ward's here?
Returns. And that's exactly where I'm going with this. They are making sure that they leave no stone unturned, having Greg Ward back in the building. Yes, he gets a rap because he's like a Reno Mahe, and he's very sure-handed and safe, not going to break the big return, but what you have there. You know that he's not going to cough the football up and cost you and put the defense and the team in an inopportune position, right? I mean, you have when you have a 6-0 team, you have to really look at run through it with a fine-tuned comb and figure out where do we need make where do we need to make our adjustments? And I think returner is a big one, and guys, coverage. I mean, you look at someone like Camus Grugier-Hill, who's now available, former Eagle, one of the best special teams cover guys in the league. I mean, he has some familiarity here. I mean, he would make a lot of sense to me. You mentioned the Brian Brayman's. That in that mold, guys, that's what they really should be looking to add. And again, that's not going to cost a lot to bring in. But I think that's so important right now because the special teams, I don't know what's exactly going on there, but I mean, they're having some trouble there. They have some young guys that aren't quite getting it done right now.
Yep, that's one area. And again, I bring up that Green Bay game. They lost the NFC Championship game, not because they weren't good enough. Their special teams cost them that game. You do not want to see that. And obviously, everybody's thinking about tweaking, making moves here. You saw the Giants trade Kadarius Toney. They finally have had enough there. They get a, third round pick, right, Andrew?
Yeah, they did. Yep.
Third round pick there. So Dallas brought in a nose tackle. Hankinson, they brought him in. So everybody's trying to make some tweaks here, right, for this this stretch run because I guess we all agree this is a 3-team race right now, or is somebody going to fall out of this thing?
No, I think that they're loading up. All 3 teams are loading up for that stretch run, knowing what's at stake here, and I think they all expect to be viable contenders, late in December and into January. So I think that what you said is accurate, and then we'll see what happens. Health is going to be paramount here. I mean, you could stockpile all the pieces that you want, but obviously we have to see how health also determines a lot of what happens here as we move forward.
Andrew, quick question for you. I saw on
Sure.
the Inside the Birds website that you guys caught up with Todd Pinkston, and I just want you to fill the listeners in, most importantly, on what he had to say. And I see that he had some he drew some comparisons to this year's team to the 04 Birds.
Where did you find Todd Pinkston, by the way?
I'm a resourceful guy. This by now.
That's a great pull. That's a great pull.
Yeah, and you know what, man? I was trying to think outside the box and add a unique perspective as to. I mean, look, this Eagles team is gotten off to a start that hasn't been accomplished since the 2004 team. So I wanted to see where Todd saw any correlation, and he mentioned, you look at Jalen Hurts as Donovan McNabb. He said, look at Devontae Smith. I mean, he's a skinnier guy like me. You had A.J. Brown, who represents what T.O. meant to that team for a team that really needed a big body receiver to really alter the dimension of the passing game. And then you already had a really strong defense that was behind Jim Johnson. And he said he has been keeping up with the team, and he definitely drew a lot of comparisons between the two teams. And I asked him, I said, look, you were thrust into the limelight when T.O. went down with the injury, and you were the de facto number one for a while. And how did you guys handle it? And what made you guys equipped to be able to withstand something like that? And he said it was just a sense of togetherness, the locker room. And you have a lot of veterans. You had Jeremiah Trotter, you had Hugh Douglas, and all these different guys that they brought in. And the chemistry that they had is very similar to what the Eagles have right now. It's very special, and everyone rallies around one another. And he said, his best advice is just to stay humble, do with what got you there, and don't peak too early. And I think that I personally see a lot of similarities between the two teams myself.
All right, real quick thought, Andrew DiCecco, on this matchup this week. Obviously, this Pittsburgh team struggling. They did beat the Buccaneers, who are struggling themselves a couple of weeks ago. Where is this kind of matchup, in your mind, in terms of the key spot that you're going to be watching on Sunday?
Well, I'm going to be watching the game in the trenches, right? I think that knowing what the Eagles restocked their pass rushing gamut, and I look at the offensive line for the Pittsburgh Steelers trying to protect a rookie quarterback who I believe is going to be pressing and trying to find ways to force the football down the field to a guy like George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. And I just think that the Eagles pass rush is going to really dictate the game early and make the Steelers become one-dimensional. And I just don't think that the Steelers are equipped to hang with the Eagles in this one. The big question that I have, guys, is how are the Eagles going to respond coming off the bye, coming off, you hear a lot of people talking about you're 6-0, you go away for a while from the facility, you're at home, and you're relaxed a little bit. Are they able to really spring to action and pick right up, or is this something that's going to thwart their rhythm or something like that? So I'll be interested to see how they come out on Sunday, and if they kind of just come out without missing a beat.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, InsideTheBirds.com. Check out, he caught up with Todd Pinkston. Check out that piece over at InsideTheBirds.com and all his coverage of Eagles-Steelers this week right here on 97.3 ESPN. Pregame at noon, kickoff at 1 with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick. Andrew DiCecco, we'll talk to you next week, buddy.
My pleasure, guys. Have a good one.